Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all members of South Sudan Women Intellectuals. My name is Baleki Mafi Ubur, and I will be the moderator for today's discussion. Today, we are going to be talking about media and women in the media. Media is considered to be the most important tool of society in the modern times, as it has the power to reach out to a large audience by mass communication and create an impact where it can reach. Social media, on the other hand, has an inevitable source of influence on mass media. The media at large has been instrumental, though not to the degree desired, in supporting the movement for women's emancipation by focusing on the neglect and marginalization of the position of women in society. The lack of gender sensitivity in the media is evidenced by the failure to eliminate the gender based stereotyping that can be found in public and private, local, national, and international media organizations. Communication, on the other hand, is extremely important for women's development, and mass media plays significant role. It is to be distinguished that growth of women's education and their entry into this business through employment has contributed to the growth of media. If media can be a powerful agent of change, it can also be an equally powerful agent for repression. And as media has huge influence on people, it should also should be treated with more responsibility through reporting and publishing of news. Today, we are joined by a plethora of very high qualified women from South Sudan. Our panelists today are from a diverse background, diverse age groups from different parts of the country. I am honored to moderate this panel, and I would like to start by introducing our panelists for today's discussion. Today, we are joined by Ms. Sarah Chan, who is a South Sudanese native, impacting the world of sports. She is a former professional basketball player and a philanthropist and a women's rights activist. Ms. Chan started her basketball journey in Laser Hill High School, rather, in Kenya, and later she secured an undergrad in basketball scholarship at the Union University in Jackson in Tennessee, where she majored in history and minored in political science. Her professional basketball career would lead her to play in many parts of the world, including Europe, in Mozambique, in Algeria, in Kenya, to name only a few. She holds a master's degree from USIU, United States International University in Kenya, where she also played a critical role in basketball and studied international relations in the field of peace and conflict studies. She's the founder of Home at Home Foundation that combats early marriages and advocates for education and gender equality. Ms. Sarah Chan, you're welcome to our panel. Today, we are also joined by another distinguished South Sudanese journalist, Ms. Lucy Poni. She's a media specialist with more than 10 years experience in broadcast, investigative journalism, and editorial management. Ms. Lucy is an alumni of a 9-month prestigious Atlas Corps Fellowship in the United States, where she worked at Voice of America's headquarters in Washington, D.C., learning best practices and gaining journalistic skills. She has extensive experience in training, developing, managing, and directing reporters to do stories, and have cultivated sources in both Sudan and South Sudan. She has also mentored and trained female journalists in border areas of Sudan and South Sudan to produce programs and report on women issues. Lucy began her professional career at the African Investigative News Service in Kenya, and she has a master's degree in peace studies and international relations and a bachelor's degree in business administration, specializing in human resource management. Ms. Lucy, you're welcome to join our panel today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're also joined by one of our distinguished female journalists that has been in the field for quite some time. We're joined by Ms. Rebecca Joshua Okwachi, who is a South Sudanese politician, and she held multiple senior portfolios, including the Minister of Roads and Bridges, Minister of Telecommunication, Deputy Minister of General Education, and the Undersecretary in the Ministry of Labor. Mrs. Okwachi holds a Master's in Information Communication Technology from Daystar University and a Bachelor's of Arts in Literature from Alexandria University in Egypt. She's a founding member of Sudanese Women Empowerment for Peace and many other organizations and networks, and she's also a member of the Global Women Waging Peace Network, supported by the Institute of Inclusive Security. She worked as a sub-editor for BBC Monitoring and was the first female journalist who championed the voice of revolution through Radio SPLA. She's also a founding member of Association for Media Development in South Sudan. Honorable Rebecca Joshua, you're welcome. Today, we are also joined by another distinguished South Sudanese female politician. We're joined by Ms. Nunu Jema Kumba, who is a South Sudanese politician and the current Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and also the SPLM Secretary General. Ms. Kumba held multiple positions over the years, including the Minister of Wildlife, Minister of Electricity, Dams and Irrigation, and Minister of Housing in 2010. She's a member of the National Constitutional Review Commission appointed in 2012, and she was also a member of the peace talks with the Sudanese government in Machakos and Naivasha. She's a member of FEMNET, a Pan-African women networking organization for women in political leadership, and she's also a member of the Women Advancement in Leadership and Economic Empowerment, and she's also one of the peace ambassadors of the Universal Peace Federation. She's currently pursuing her Master's of Security Management from Egerton University, and she holds a bachelor's degree in Public Administration and Management from the University of Namibia. Honorable Gemma Nunu Kumba, you're welcome amongst us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, today we're going to be talking about women in the media, and there's a history in South Sudan where women played multiple roles in the media sector. So many of the influencers of how we view men and women in the media are the most pervasive and one of the most powerful ways which are woven into our daily lives. And media insuates their messages into the consciousness of every people in every part of their lives. All forms of media communicate images of both men, women, girls, and boys, which can sometimes perpetuate realistic and sometimes unrealistic and sometimes stereotypical perceptions of people, etc. I want to start by asking Honorable Gemma Kumba, why is the media most of the time very biased and negative towards women? And I want you to also speak about women public figures and what's your experience on the usage of media as a whole? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Palek and members of the panel. I'm very grateful to you, the moderator and the manager of this forum, for inviting me to be part of these important discussions. First of all, talking about media and the stereotypes, we need to look back at the history of media itself and the role women played at that time when media was actually established. That's we are talking about the 1800s when the print media was established, mainly the newspaper, and also coming up to 1920s when the radios were introduced, and then evolving on to 1930s when TV were introduced as a means of communication and discussing societal issues. So this we look at those epochs in terms of the roles women were playing, and if you look at those epochs, you find that the role of women were clearly defined by culture, whereby women were basically confined to the home, to be housewife and also to be mothers and rearing children, while the public affairs were actually the domain of men. So you can see from there that there was nothing to talk about in media about women because the work women do in homes is not considered as anything, as any contribution to societal development. So this evolved on as the media evolved itself. And then you see we are operating in a society which was designed, I mean, in structures, social and political structures that were designed by men and for men. So because the man is dominant in the media itself field, so they take that advantage to promote themselves while women interests are left behind, given the historical role, the historical and cultural roles of women. As things evolve on, you also find that women are very few in the media in terms of decision-making positions, and they continue to dominate the field, and therefore neglect the issues of women. Right now, it's like almost 6% of women, maybe, or women issues are portrayed on media, while actually a huge majority of men, like over 70% of all those that control media in terms of decision making and senior positions in the media industry are men. So this becomes a challenge because, as Dr. Miles Munro said, the main challenge women have today is how to function in a society, in a system that was designed based on biased attitude against women. And also now, coming to the 21st century, the main challenge also men find these days is how to manage the woman of the 21st century, because these are women who actually know their rights, and they know what they want, and they know that legally they are protected by international law, by international conventions, and that the issue of women participation or equality is no longer a local issue. It has become global. So from that perspective and that history, the stereotypes, the gender stereotypes, continue to be perpetuated by those who are dominating the media. As public figures, we also have experienced the same in terms of how we are portrayed. Most of the time, women's programs are not well represented or presented in media. And we find that the bias continues, the attitude continues, to the extent that even when women express themselves in media or carry programs, you find that they are not given enough airtime for the program to be given. Or sometimes even when you make a statement, the presenters will actually leave the important message you have passed and actually focus on less important messages in the speeches. So these are some of the experiences we are having as public figures, and we know we are handling a situation in a patriarchal system, and therefore we won't give up, but we will continue to raise our voices and to ensure that the media actually become a promoter for both men and women, as we talk about the rights and the rights of men and women in all aspects of our life.
Thank you so much, Honorable Gemma Nunu Kumba. And I want to just agree with the point that you made about how media is a reflection of a society. So if our society is a patriarchal society, that is then reflected in the media. And the media sector is also highly dominated by men. It's a men industry, Very few women are in some of these spaces. So thank you very much for highlighting these very important points. I want to move on to Honorable Rebecca and bring the conversation a little bit more into her personal journey. Honorable Rebecca, throughout the movement, you have been part of the media, handling issues related to women, and also in your capacity as the Minister of Telecommunications for many years. Could you also give us a little bit, shed more light on the roles that you played and how those roles defined and influenced the participation of women in key positions and the reflection of women in the media?
Thank you very much. Want me to go ahead? Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much, Paleki. You're asking me about my role and how does it influence women's participation. First of all, I would like to say that this is a very important show, and I would like it to be a contributor towards the issues we are talking about regarding media, the role of women in the media, and the reflection of women in the media. And that is because we need that. I appreciate what Honorable Gemma Nunu said in terms of the reflection of women in the media, and much more because our society is a patriarchal society. And the patriarchal society is socialization. And therefore, any angel man or male would always have that socialization that they had from their parents. The boy, the boy, the boy, and therefore the girl becomes secondary. And therefore, given my role in the media, I would want to say that right from Radio SPLA, Radio SPLA was Sudan People's Liberation Army radio, and it was much more on the cause of the revolution. And therefore, the cause of the revolution was for all of us, male and female. It also had the raising the consciousness of people who had suffered injustices. And therefore, it was our role, all of us, men and women. It was also giving morale to the army, because it was the army of liberation for the sake of this independence that we have today. And therefore, we didn't expect Radio SPLA to be a pro-women only. It had a lot of programs which was for everybody, because it was for the masses. For me, I was just like any other man there, if you could say. And my role was as a freedom fighter. And therefore, I had to go by the policies of the liberation. But what was good is that some of us who came from our background of consciousness, that as a girl, you get educated, you are just like your male brother. Our parents socialized us to say that we are also as important as they are. And that is the goodness of having parents who would have that open-mindedness. And therefore, as a journalist with the Radio of the Liberation, I said, look, I'm going to play my role like any other man in terms of the cause of the revolution, but also I'm not going to lose track of the women. And that's why I started a program called Al-Mar Al-Munadala. Some of you maybe were younger, but for those who knew, that was the first and the only program that was directly focusing on women. That's where I take one of my nicknames today. By the way, if you don't know, I'm Al-Mar Al-Munadala. That is the woman who struggles for, and for that matter was the liberation, but also the woman that is in the liberation, and we wanted to bring her voice out. So that was one particular program that we need to know that I initiated, and I did all the journalism work so that the voice of the woman in the revolution can be heard. And it had a lot of influence on the women, not only in the liberation, but even the women who were outside there. Today, I hear people who said, it's because you called us, because your voice was the voice of Rebecca, the female, who said, come and join the liberation, we came. So I would say this one was an impact on women, for them to say, okay, since there are other women in the liberation like us, we can also go and participate and play our role. And many of them are today in that leadership position. Not only in the liberation, but if you would want me to continue, I also played a role in the other media apparatus that I went to. And one was Sudan Radio Service, when I was an executive editor in Sudan Radio Service. Apart from other managerial responsibility I had, I continue to do the role of a reporter from the ground, from the field, news writer and program manager, but also I trained a number of young people of whom I'm very proud of today. So one of them is first to train. I trained young women. I trained men and women, but also had that bias on the women, and especially on the girls who were growing. And many of them, I put them directly under my desk. There were some who came from Sudan, for example, and they studied journalism, but they did not practice. They never practiced. But when they joined us, I said, look, if you are ready to learn, I put you under my desk. In 3 months, I'll make you a journalist. And with the training and continuous training and production, we go to the studio together and all this. A number of women today I'm proud of are in the journalism sphere. Then I also created 2 programs. Rukn al-Mar'a in Arabic, because we are keen that it should not be only the language that we speak, English, fluent English and all, that will appeal to our masses. So Rukn al-Mar'a was in Arabic, and I was a producer and presenter. But I was going to the field, in our villages, and I would bring the voices of women from there. And we created a lot of programs from Rukn al-Mar'a. I also had one in English, which is Our Voices. Our Voices, the voices of the women. And the voices of women were more or less, sometimes it's the same program I translate in English, but sometimes it's directly in English, that I think influence a lot of women. And in those programs, we're talking about political mobilization. If you want to go into politics, please come. Don't listen to those who say politics is dirty. It is you who makes politics good. And if you don't come to the position of decision making, you will ever remain there and crying the men are not making you participate. The other thing was the economic development. Involvement of women in agriculture and businesses and the rest. And I interviewed women exclusively. And if I interview men, I would want them to contribute to the role of women, to empower women, and also to remember that women are with them on the same line, not behind them, side by side. So Rukn al-Mar'a, Our Voices have been the two programs in Sudan Radio Service. Apart from then, areas of advocacy and the rest. In telecommunications, I was happy also to be the minister. And being the minister, it means you are a policy maker. And as a policy maker, we had the policy for telecommunications, of which Article 6.3 was with a lot of focus on women. One, it was talking about the role of ICT in empowering women. And then 6.1.3.12 was specifically talking about the empowerment of women and youth together. And with this one, we played a lot of advocacy. And I really want to pride myself of being good in advocating. That one, I will not shy away. Several times people will tell me, you are now on a very high level. Why do you talk about women, women, women? I'll say I'll forever talk about women, because I have girls who are coming behind me and I want them to also take opportunity and learn. It talks also about civil society. It talks about empowerment of women economically, politically, and the rest. And therefore, all the policy documents, especially in ICT, and maybe one area I would mention as an example, in 2013, as women leaders, ministers and ministers, national and the states, went to Mombasa for a training, for workshop, orientation. And that's one area I said, women from today, if you don't use a computer, please do that. And if not, please, even if you don't know how to read and write, in technology, you can talk. You can be represented. You can you can talk even with your voice. You don't have to be writing things if you don't know. But then you can use the technology and ICTs to give you an opportunity to grow politically, culturally, economically. So we've tried to put into their minds, even the ministers who came from the states of social development, I told them, the sky is the limit. You can benefit from that. So I want to say that what I have done is not enough. There's still a lot. You need a critical mass. But the seeds I have planted during my role, I believe they are very important seeds. And if we capitalize on them, much more, as I see my daughters growing and today becoming even better learner than us, I think we can benefit. Also, the issue of literacy, which is also in the policy of ICTs, the telecommunications, the advocacy, and in the ministry, when I was a minister, I opened up for young girls to come and be trained under the ministry. They didn't have to pay. They only needed transport. And there was a group of women who even formed a small women nucleus group that is supposed to be empowering themselves and even advocating for others. During my time, my ministry was open for women, for female, for youth to come and have literacy through training, and also pure ICT training in terms of computer and online and IT work. And I even encourage them to also become technical, not only for talking and conversation, but for that. So I tried what I could, and I think our policies give provisions of that. And therefore, we need to benefit from the opportunity and all together make that critical mass so that our women increase in number. When I talk about critical mass, I'm saying you don't have to have Rebecca alone. You need many of Rebeccas to be there so that we can create that critical mass that will open way and change the minds of those who are socialized to be pro-women, pro-men only. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Rebecca, and thank you for the different roles and the different policies that you have initiated during your time in the ministry. And definitely, media serves as a very tactical tool to disseminate information, to coordinate action, to publicize a cause, as you have talked about Radio SPLA. So thank you so much for highlighting that. Um, I want to move on to our next panelist, who's a journalist, and we know that journalism is the production and distribution of reports on current and past events. Madame Lucy, if I may ask you, what motivated you to become a journalist?
I think that's a tricky question a little bit because I kind of stumbled into journalism. I didn't go to journalism school, and but along the way, I got to meet people who mentored me into writing and into doing journalistic works, and then I got to work with Sudan Radio Service, where Mama Rebecca was, and I was very, very, I would say, very, very lucky that there were women in the leadership of Sudan Radio Service at that time, and so we got to get a very easy way to learn the trade, and also I've just learned journalism on the job and the trainings that I've had through the years working as a journalist. But yes, I am very, would also like to say that I'm also very passionate about bringing out the voices of the voiceless, the people who are not able to get the opportunity to speak out or get the opportunity to be heard, or the issues that are being really undermined or being put under the tables. I'm very passionate about bringing kind of issues up to the media for a conversation to start happening so that we can, start changing the kind of mindset that we have with our people. So that is a passion for me right now.
Okay, thank you so much, Lucy. And I guess from passion is where we can strive to do the work and promote the causes that we have to whatever extent that we can. So thank you for your answer. Mrs. Sarah Chan, being a public figure, playing in all these different parts of the world, at what point did you, as a young South Sudanese woman, become comfortable with the media? And also, did being famous change your way of life, being under the eye of the media all the time? And how did you manage the private and public lifestyles, if I may say?
Thank you for that question, and it's such an honor to be here among all these amazing panelists. When did I get comfortable with media? Due to my basketball journey and different championships that put us in positions to be able to be presented maybe as a school or as a club at the different media houses, kind of gave me that feel of, oh, okay, it's not as bad as you would think, because there's always the fear of the unknown, but just definitely along the way, being at different media houses kind of just built that confidence to just be there and just be authentically ourselves. as a team, and when it was one-on-one, that I was able to be able to just present myself. And it all, I think it honestly just sprouts from the teachings from my parents. They always emphasized on our presentation skills, and the different schools that we went to also emphasized so much on presentation. It was key in our coursework. Um, did it change me? I don't think of myself in that light so much, because it was a gradual going up, right? So it was different stages that needed a different, approach, that I was kind of just conditioned by, just first of all working within a team, then secondly being put in positions where you have to basically learn how to work and manage relationships between coaches, yourself, agents, yourself, organizations, and yourself. So I would say that it didn't change much, because now going to the next question, how did I manage it public? Like, how did I manage my public and private life? Now that goes down to basically my upbringing. All of us growing up in South Sudanese communities, it's basically almost a communal upbringing, where, for instance, my upbringing was living with like 35 people from a very young age, coming up to maybe my teenage, when we moved from Sudan at the time, that now was a different setting. More of the immediate family and the extended family wasn't here, but just the learning how to share, learning how to basically respect authority within the house, and learning how to carry yourself as a young girl, as you always have the voice of your mother at the back of your head. So those have really guided me throughout life. So I haven't felt that I've had to handle my private life as opposed to my public life any differently, because the principles for me have been just alike. It's so amazing listening to our honorables speak here, because how they talked about, your voice is powerful, your voice is this and that. My first introduction to women empowerment was actually my mother's voice back in the day, and it was really bold, and it came out during a time that no one else was willing to speak up, because they were looking for the males in the family and so forth. Back in the day, around 99, 97-ish, coming through. So it was really neat. I thought I'd highlight that to hear our elders speak about this. It's empowering. Yeah, so for the questions, for the last one, I don't think I have had to basically change a whole lot, but to just follow the principles that were instilled since I was a kid. So they just come in handy, I guess.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your experience and how you didn't find a lot of difficulty dealing with media. And I'm sure other people had a totally different experience or journey altogether. And media, as much as it's an excellent tool to promote causes, as we have previously mentioned, it can also be a tool that can be used for the downfall of people through their private lives, etc. And we've seen that happening with public figures all over the world. So thank you so much for that answer. And connecting that to my next question, that goes to Honorable Gemma Nunu. The question of confidence. Being a public figure, you're always watched by people. Everyone wants to know, even from simple things like what you're wearing, how you're speaking, whether you pronounce this word right or not. So when your life and everything that you do is put under the microscope, people tend to be scared to appear or speak on media. What tips can you give women that are watching you and or some women that are scared to appear on these public platforms? If there are any tips that you have used or built throughout the years, what tips can you give them? You have to unmute. Honorable Gemma, you have to unmute. Yes, thank you.
Okay. you. Yeah, thank you once again. It's true, you are right. When you are a public figure, especially if you are a female public figure, it becomes a big challenge because everybody eyes are on you, and therefore, as a female leader, you are also a role model to the young people, the young ladies. Therefore, you should be able to present yourself, to be cautious of how you handle yourself um, in public. The way you present yourself, the way you talk, the way you dress. I said it is a challenge because people will not look at your male colleagues who are also public figures much the way they look at a woman, because you will always be in the public eye, and instead of looking at the positive thing you're doing, they would like to see what are only the negativities about you, and then amplify that using the media itself. So we as female leaders, it is our responsibility to mentor the young ladies who are aspiring to be in public offices, and to encourage them. Sometimes the women are harassed so much to the extent that you get intimidated to get what you want, or to pursue your dreams, and all the negative things that are said about women, even the way women are portrayed in media. To me, these are just mechanisms that are perpetuated by society to discourage women from taking public offices, or from occupying their space as required by the constitution, as required by the rights of women itself. So I would like to encourage those who are there, who are afraid to be in public offices, because they are afraid that they will be given names, because when a woman is become challenging to to men, they start giving you names, and then giving you names, and making you look what you are not. So since what a woman knows what she's doing, and she knows her capacity, so I want to urge women to be assertive and to be confident in themselves, because I believe there is nothing that a woman cannot do. There is nothing that are only designed for men, because all the roles of men and women were designed by society. As I said before, we are coming out from very patriarchal society, where the roles of women were defined by culture, which is not necessarily true. Because if you look back at the Second World War, which I sometimes refer to as a blessing in disguise, during those days in 1930s, 40s, women had no space. Women's space was at home. But when the World War started, all the men went to the front line, and then women were left behind. The women took the role of women they went into factories to produce what was needed in the front line. All the war hardware were manufactured by women, and women left their roles and came to the factories and came to the offices and ran the countries, ran administration where the men were fighting. And when men came back, they came and found that the woman was not at home. The woman was in the office. And this changed the whole dynamics. This changed the whole power relations, and also challenged the stereotypes about what men and women can do. Coming to our recent history, of course, it became now difficult for men to say, okay, women now go back to the offices. Although some of them expect the women to go back, to the homes. So it was a difficult situation how to manage this now. How you have seen women managing things in the absence of men. And now after coming back, you think, no, you can't do it, you have to go back home. Coming back to our recent history, during our liberation struggle, women, the South Sudanese women, assumed roles which were traditionally designed for men. Women became heads of households. Women provided. Women took care of children. Women managed the homes. They took care of the men even when they were in the front line. And then also this affected the power relation between men and men in the current new Republic of South Sudan, because everything women did was evidence that women and cannot be confined to one particular role. So this is the history I'm bringing so that today our women should not see themselves in that role anymore. The women should see themselves as equal partners with men. They should work hand in hand in all aspects of life, while respecting our roles as a mother, of course, as mothers, as managers of homes. That does not prevent us from doing other things. So I just want to encourage the women that we need to fill our space, which has been created by the legal instruments of this country, by the Constitution, by the African Union Charter, and women should feel free to participate in public life, appear in the media, express their views in the media, and also go into the media industry itself, and promote women, and support women by giving the positivity of women, their success stories, not always looking at the negative stories of women, or only portraying women as spectators, but portraying women as leaders, as people who are contributing equally to the development of their nations. So what I want to say is I want to encourage the women out there to come up and take their responsibility, take up their rights, and participate effectively in all aspects of our society.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Gemma Nunukumba. And I think that encouragement and mentoring is very much needed because a lot of young people might be interested in, for example, politics, but might shy away because of the media and how it portrays women, maybe. So I think it is important that women who are in these fields ahead of younger women to actually mentor and prepare younger women on how to handle some of these issues because these adversaries will come whether we like them or not. So it's important that uh, we mentor younger ones so that they are prepared to face some of these challenges. So thank you so much for that encouragement. It's very appreciated. Moving on to Honorable Rebecca Joshua. Um, my question to you is why is it that more women are involved in careers in the communication sector, but very few have attained positions at the decision-making level or serve on governing boards and bodies that influence media policy? Tying into the point made earlier on about how the media sector is basically a male-dominated sector.
Thanks a lot, Paradi. That's a very beautiful, Paleki. That's a very important question. Yes, one thing for you to reach a particular level, you really have to work for it. And I just tied with what was said earlier by Madam Nunu that we encourage, we mentor. And earlier also we talked about media, like Lucy said she stumbled into journalism, but there was a passion inside her which was not tapped. And then when the opportunity availed itself, then it came out. Sometimes we have talents, we keep them inside us. You are told, come and go for sports like my daughter here, you will say, no, I can't jump, I don't know. No, it's for men, it's not for boys, not for us. So I want to say first that there are talents inside us. And those talents, we have to bring them out. When we keep them inside, we will never make use of them. Today, when people come to discover that I'm a poet, I can sing, I can even sing for the party and, and marriage of your daughter if you want, and I write, and I'm in the media, I'm a sportswoman, and I'm a politician, people will say, come on. But they see it. So there's a lot inside us which we don't make use of. One area is for us to encourage ourselves that if you have a passion for the media, for journalism, for communications, please tap it and come out. And for our women outside there, if you are a mother, encourage your daughters, at least have one of them who becomes a journalist or any of those areas that we're talking about. Then, when we encourage them from that particular age, then now they follow that line. Then we add into it the training, which I mentioned earlier. Some of our daughters would say, I had studied journalism, but I did not practice, so they don't know where to start from. 3 months out of my experience was enough to make somebody today. And one of these daughters, I think she must be somewhere out in the USA there. She could handle the studio, she could go to the field to report, and she could do her programs. This is training. I went to Rumbek to train Radio Rumbek. And out of the number of the people who were brought for training, there was only one girl. She looked so miserable because she was the only one. Imagine there in some remote areas we have. But I said, from this training, this girl must shine. And she changed her situation. Issues of confidence that we talked about earlier. You are there. You know what I do? I go for some workshop or some activity or some training or any of these activities. And I see the journalist guys walking around with their equipment, and they feel like they don't want to approach you. They're eyeing some other people. I don't know, maybe because of their suits or their look or their what. You think I leave them? I go and say I have a statement to say. For us women, sometimes we think, let them come to us. Okay, you don't want to go to them and tell them, bring me because you want to appear. But you have a message. You have a statement to give. And therefore, I usually forge my way boldly and say, look, I want to speak because there is a message you want to give out. Now, this helps us to gain confidence and then say, if there are how many hundreds of thousands who were in the SPLA? Many. Why do we end up only 2 of us, Mary from the Nuba Mountain and myself, who were the only female in Radio SPLA? You think I was going to survive there if I was not bold also enough to remain there? Mary has gone to the north, the Nuba are in the north, but I turned out to be the only lady. I kept my strengths there. So I just want to say, we will reach that level of decision making or being heads of the boards or being CEOs or being ministers of communication or telecommunications when we say, look, it is our right to be wherever we are. Now, thanks to our leadership in our country, that some of us from the very time of the revolution, we said, look, we were like the men in every aspect, and therefore we need an affirmative action so that also our sisters and mothers who are not having that advantage will have a chance for them to participate. And we worked hard for our 25% affirmative action, which we got, and it was enshrined in the Constitution. Then again, we said, no, we are going to go. We are going to reach 50, half. Then we moved to 35%. I think today we are 35% affirmative action. What we want is to fulfill the 35%. So let us not be shied away by anybody or pushed away by anybody. It's our right. We have to be bold. So if we want to be CEOs or heads of, some institutions in our country, we really have to work very hard for it because we are working in a male-dominated environment. Most of them are victims of socialization, but some of them are big-headed, and therefore, through our networks, we can work together. Coming back to the documents, for media, we have the Constitution, which grants us act. We have a constitution. This constitution is translated into, we have policies, we have the act, we have the regulations. Let us make use of them. So if you are a lady, don't say, look, they victimize me because I'm a female journalist. If you know where your lines are in the regulations, then you will not go wrong. You look at the media ethics and say and find where you are. Don't promote things which are not allowed. In addition, also I want to encourage us to, if we guard and learn and absorb the regulations, then we will not go on the wrong side of the law. And therefore, I want to encourage us and say, we can do it. When I'm looking at the documents, the media regulations, you find this lady, Atong Majok. Atong Majok, yes, for the board of the media authority. Yeah. Some of us celebrate. When you hear somebody is leading this particular position, we celebrate. During the time I was the Minister of Telecom, I was sometimes representing my colleague who was the Minister of Information. I will be the spokesperson of the government, and I will do it wholeheartedly, very boldly, and I will hear people saying that was excellent. And I continue to encourage myself. So I want to encourage the young women that the sky is the limit. If you have the passion in you, move it forward and encourage yourself. Don't be pushed away by anybody else. Even if you find yourself the only lady with them, continue to play that role. When you also grow, don't say enough, I'm tired. Don't say, oh, journalism is very difficult. It is very rough road. But you can do anything as a woman. And therefore move forward and say, look, this time I want to be the Minister of Telecom. I want to be the Minister of Information. I want to be the CEO of the Media Authority or the any of those, the Communications Authority. You reach up, aspire, and say, I want it, and go for it. And I want to encourage our networks. I want to encourage our advocacy, and I always talk about the critical mass for women, because when we are many and our voices are high and we are demanding our rights, nobody is going to cow us down. So I want to see many of you there very soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Rebecca, for the word of encouragement and sharing also your experience in the field. And I like what you said about how, nothing is given to us on a silver platter as women. So we have to strive hard to take spaces that are ours. And most importantly, also is educating ourselves, sharpening our skills, so that no one will say you brought a woman there who is not qualified or who is unable to deliver. So I think also, as much as we want to take these spaces, we have our responsibility ourselves to sharpen our skills and sharpen and increase our knowledge. So thank you so much for that. Moving on to you, Lucy, with your experience in journalism and working in the field, can you talk to us a little bit about the ethics and the code of conduct and highlight some key provisions that exist in the media laws in South Sudan?
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say thank you to Mama Becky for bringing, Honorable Rebecca for talking about, coming out, women, being brave
I
enough
love this Mama Becky. I love this Mama Becky. You can say it.
Okay, sure. So I think listening from Mama Becky and from Honorable Gemma Nunu, it gives women an opportunity, especially those ones who are in the media still coming up, to feel that we can do it and it's possible, and nobody can sit on us if we are strong enough to and stand on our professionalism, especially. Yes, we have a very beautiful code of conduct that spells out how the journalists should operate, and it's really pinned on the freedom of expression, which is an international human rights. So we have aspects like, for example, the accuracy and fairness, which is objectivity, where we have to ensure that all the things that we report as journalists, whether they print, whether they broadcast or electronic, all that is broadcast or reported is accurate, information that is not distorted, whether in the form of pictures or texts or other material. They really need to be accurate. We must report on the basis of facts. We must report at all times, make sure that we verify the accuracy of any information that we get. All the documents must not be falsified in any way. So we have to ensure that every information that we get, any document that we get, is really authentic, and that is the document that we use for reporting. There's an aspect of correction and opportunity to reply. So if, for example, a media house reports some misleading information or statement or a distortion, then once that is known, then you can easily or promptly, you are promptly required to make an apology and publish it, or you air it on whichever platform that the previous statement was made. And there is an opportunity also to respond if, for example, you have made a report about somebody and there was no, it wasn't really fair, and there was an aspect that felt like needed more information. Then there's an opportunity that you can give to the other side to actually just come out and respond to the issues. There's the issue of privacy. There are some issues that are a little discreet. There are issues about, debts, sympathy issues. Those kind of issues need to be tackled in a very sensitive way. And so you should not, the journalists are required to not restrict the right to report to legal proceedings unless when there are requests and there are inquests into those issues. There's the aspect of discrimination. When reporting, any media must not place the people in a negative light solely just because of their gender or race or color, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or because of a disability. And also, you should not refer to a person's race, color, all those ethnicity, religion, just because you're talking of an issue, unless it is really very important that that information is really relevant to the story. So those kind of things need to really be handled with care. There's also a clause that talks about protection of the vulnerable. There's the protection of children. And in this one, I think the most important one is that, for example, there might be cases of you must protect first the needs and the interests of the children, and only in cases where it's of public interest. For example, if there's a case of abuse, if there's neglect or abandonment, then you could interview or photograph a child in connection with these issues. But you have to, for example, get permission or get consent of the custodian of that child. Victims of sexual assault, also, these are issues that are very sensitive as well, and they need to be tackled in a very sensitive way. So professionals, media professionals are advised not to identify victims of sexual assault or publish any information that could contribute to the identification unless the victim has consented to such information. When you're reporting a crime, every issue should be taken as when a case is in the court, then it's unless a criminal investigation is over and the court has said that this person is a criminal, that's when we can actually call somebody a criminal. So you're a criminal after all the investigation has been done. There are issues of incitement. You know very much that incitement is a big issue, especially in South Sudan, and especially with the media. There are so many things, issues of incitement, ethnic incitement, religious incitement, incitements of crime. And so the issues of incitement are really issues that, as journalists, we are told to really avoid the use of, harsh words or words that could incite hatred or anger or, just inflame situations. We need to really take great care when dealing with those kind of things. When you're covering, for example, ethnic disputes and clashes, it is important that journalists, just make sure that we verify the information, we present the information in a manner that is, is conducive, so that it tries to maintain the peace relations as well, and also, balance, because we also want to ensure that we do not say that because now so and so is fighting, we do not want to give the information to the public, but make sure that that information is relayed in a manner that it will not be favorable to one side or the other, or just create some tension. Actually, it's really to reduce the kind of reporting, is really to reduce the tensions that are already there when there's a conflict going on. The other issue, for example, the issues of bribery, we have to be very careful with, how journalists, we conduct ourselves. We must ensure that we protect ourselves from real and apparent conflicts of interest. There are sometimes when we go for a press conference and you're given a brown envelope and you take it, these kind of things can alter the way you present or the way you report an issue. So there are these kind of things, and I know it's something that it's something of discussion, because sometimes you would go, for example, in our ministries, they would make tea and something like that, and tell people, come have tea after this, and then you are given transport to go home. These are really issues that can sway the way you report if you are really not an objective journalist. And so it's important to be careful with those kind of things, because they could be used for bribery. Organizations can use such kind of things for you to be able to use the media outlet as advertising for them, or or trying to pass a certain narrative that might not be for public interest. So these are some of the things that are in the code of conduct. Some of the main key provisions in the Media Act, I think, are really also international. It's basically, the free media, ensuring that there is diversification of ideas in the media, ensuring that we are able to give ideas and opinions, giving everybody an opportunity to talk. If you're talking of an issue about security, let us have somebody from the stakeholders and from the public also partaking in that discussion. Media to be protected from any form of censorship and government interference. These are issues that have been raised in the Media Act. Essentially, media should be independent, really, but we know that is not the case. The other thing is about laws that really protect the access to information, and this is a really big problem. I think as journalists we are facing, there's a very big it's a difficulty to really get information that is meant for the public, because basically public offices are places where the public can go and get information and ask questions and get all these kind of things. But in our situation, it's the opposite. If you're following up on a story and you need to talk to the Minister of Education to give you, for example, data regarding a number of things, it will take you a very long time, one. Two, sometimes you may never get the information, and this information is really not even out there. So it's difficult most of the times to get, for example, documents and to get information. And I'd just like to say something else that not Mama Becky, Honorable Gemma was responding to when you asked her to talk about, her experience as a public figure and being able to talk to the media. In my experience as a journalist, I will tell you this, and I think many other journalists would agree, that it is very difficult, for example, to get, especially female ministers to speak on air or to speak on issues. Very few of them would pick up the phone and respond. Very few of them, you would walk to their offices and they would respond. Very few of them would respond to even an email. And this is not just our female ministers, it's also our female, the women leaders of organizations and these kind of things. It's very, very difficult to get information out of them. And this has been a frustration. If you get to a collection of journalists in one room, and there's a story that is going on and a big story that people want to get the minister of so-and-so, somebody will just tell you, this person will never talk to you, or this person does not speak to the media. And this is really discouraging. I think as journalists and female journalists in this space, I feel like if I need to do a story, I can get Mama Rebecca very fast. I can get Honorable Gemma Nunukumba very fast to respond to these stories, because how do we even make our publicity as women? How do we come out? How do people know what we are doing if we are not speaking about them? These men, they are always on the media, even if they are saying the wrong things. They are always on the media. They are always ready to respond. They are always ready to do this. But we put, I don't know whether we are censoring ourselves. I don't know whether we are trying to be careful with our positions or what. But I think it's important that also as public figures, you show us that it is, you're here, this is your position, and you're responsible for whatever is going on in this position. And if media is approaching you to respond to an issue, you're there to respond. It is usually not, it is discouraging, to be honest. This is something that we journalists have faced, and I thought it was important that I raised it at this point. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for the points that you made. And I think they're also very important points. And I think we will also give an opportunity to both Honorable Gemma Nunukumba and Honorable Rebecca Joshua to react or to respond to these comments, because I think it will be beneficial for them to also to respond to that. I don't know, Honorable Gemma and Honorable Rebecca, if you want to respond quickly to some of the challenges that our journalists are experiencing in accessing female politicians or female leaders, which I think is a very important point. So if both of you want to react to that before we move on to our questions. Any of you?
Yeah, maybe quickly. One thing is that maybe even the same ministers you would want to approach, it depends also on how prepared are they for the media. We talked early. There is that scary kind of information that, okay, the media is going to reflect you in this way and the other way. So, because we are not talking about particular people now, we're talking about in general. Some people might have not been used to media, to talking to media, maybe by nature, they are calm, they are shy, they are any of those reasons we don't know, that may not be forthcoming. That is in their character. The other one could be, could be, that also some of our young journalists, and it's good, Lucy has talked about the code of ethics. Sometimes some think, and I've gone through that, it's good that I come from that background, and then now when I'm the minister, I would see some of these challenges our young journalists would do. Part of our training is even just to introduce yourself, who you are, not to just find anybody anywhere you want to talk with them. So it depends also on the training our young journalists have. How do you approach people? I remember someone came to interview me one time, and the guy was like all over the place in my office. And when I was trying to use my little knowledge and say, look, check your mic, and I don't know what. No, it's okay, it's okay. And then after all this recording, which information I gave him, he realized that there's something wrong with the recorder. It's very annoying. Also, in terms of code of conduct and code of ethics, which a journalist must, must learn it like the national anthem that we would call it, at the back of your mind. The way you treat also the people you're interviewing is another one challenge also. They may not be ready to give you the information if you also go beyond the lines of the ethics that that are put down in the code of conduct. We're also talking about what could have happened in some of these situations. Sometimes you could be chasing information that, as Lucy mentioned, it could be a criminal situation, could be a case which is still in the court, and then you pester somebody that they must give you the information. And at the end of the day, they will not give you the information because they know it's wrong. It's not the time to do that. But all in all, I would want to say that the battle between the media and the government has been all over the place, even on those advanced countries. So you'll find always this kind of war between the two, and you will always realize somebody of the two could be on the wrong side, or the two are not agreeing. But again, I put on the other side now, coming back to the side of the journalists, and I would say, as female senior people in our positions, ministers in parliament, advisors, and the rest, I think it's good we are available for interviews, we are available for information, because we cannot be crying that, they don't bring us, we brought our statement, they did not record us, and when you are not ready for them. So be there, be bold. There is one small little thing that people forget always to say. You can go for that interview, even if you think the journalist is very fierce, it's very difficult, and people talk about them as a difficult person. Answer what you would want to answer. You could be asked a question that is either meant to pull your leg or it's not the right time. You can say, I have no comments. So you can't lose the whole interview. You can't lose the whole opportunity because maybe you think that journalist is going to put you in trouble. So it's also another way of encouraging the senior people, especially senior female, and say, look, accept, and let them come and tell you what topic you want to talk about. Talk about what you can talk about, what you know by regulations, by law, by your status also as a minister. Sometimes we are asked questions, but they are meant for the spokesperson of the government. They are meant for the party. I am not the one to respond to that. So if somebody is pushing me and saying, no, you must give us information, I am sorry, it's not me, it's the spokesperson. No, this is party issue. No, this is not the time for it to talk about it. I mean, I think the most important thing is for us to be oriented, to know what are the regulations and the laws and the ethics, and what is it that the journalist will post to you in terms of the barrier between you and them, and you go for it. But we miss here some opportunities, as Lucy said, because men will come, even if they don't have much, they will appear and they will speak, even sometimes clumsy language and no, what we call in Egypt, zambaleta. It's a combination of something you don't understand. They speak and take a lot of airtime. We should use it as female to send our messages outside, to assert our position, to educate people about our work, and the sky is the limit. I always say, look, it's my time. You are not going to push me out of here. So we need that courage, and we need that relationship between us and the media and media houses and journalists. And then we go by the regulations, go by the code of ethics, and go by also respecting what a minister would say. I can't respond to this because they know why they don't respond to that. At that level of decision making, there is no minister who would just say, I don't want to answer because they don't know. They are at that level of responsibility, and we are also responsible under the law of the country. It doesn't mean that we don't exercise the freedom of expression, but also the journalists sometimes should respect the ministers if they say, I'm not answering this in particular, but not every time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would like to give an opportunity to Honorable Gemma Lulu to also react to that. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you once again. I think Honorable Rebecca has adequately responded to the concern of my daughter Lucy Poni. It is true, sometimes we don't respond to the call of the journalists when they need to interview, for many reasons, some of which have already been stated by my sister. One of the things is sometimes journalists call at times that they just come in or they call you on phone when actually you are engaged with other commitments, and when you ask them to make an appointment and come at another time, which I think they get disappointed and never return. So they should also understand that ministers, like some of us, we program our day in advance. Sometimes we are quite busy, and we just need to structure our meetings. That means that if anybody needs an interview with a minister, you need to make that appointment in advance so that you are allocated enough time or a conducive time for the interview. Another thing is also that sometimes there are many times that one get interviewed and then the following day when you look at the paper, they actually don't report exactly what you say. Sometimes they twist your idea and what you said and make it something different. You get even surprised when you made this kind of statement. Otherwise, nobody is refusing to talk to journalists. There are always reasons because we are there to serve the society, we are there to serve our communities, the government. So when there is an opportunity, a conducive opportunity for all of us, we can always cooperate. As Honorable Rebecca also said, there are certain things which are not within your mandate to talk about. So one cannot be forced to talk about something which is not within his or her mandate. So sometimes these when we turn down some interviews. Otherwise, the issue of the code of ethics should really be respected by our journalists, and also they should also understand. Sometimes they should understand the political environment political and social environment that we function in. So that's basically what I can say. Otherwise, it's good to raise that concern. We have taken note of it, and we will, I think, do better in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Gemma Nunu and Honorable Rebecca, for reacting to that particular point raised by Miss Lucy, because I think that's a very important point, and media is a very important tool, and we want to make sure that women actually do utilize this space. Miss Sarah Chan, if I may move to you. As a public figure in South Sudanese public figure, there is a lot of cyberbullying that happens, or cyber harassment rather, that happens in social media spaces towards South Sudanese public figures, females especially. There is so cyberbullying is harassment or bullying that is using electronic means, basically, or also known as online bullying. We have seen that in various such social media outlets where, for example, of recent, what is dominating or what has been the headlines in social media is about a young South Sudanese woman who chose to marry or to date a very famous, to choose to date a non-South Sudanese. And that has been the headlines of so many people. And there's a lot of outrage on social media. And I think to me, that's a form of cyberbullying. So I want you to speak a little bit on that topic and how one can handle it if someone experiences such cyberbullying or cyber harassment. Over to you.
Well, I know I'm glad you raised that question because I unfriended actually a lot of people on Facebook just because of the mentality towards that particular topic. The young girl, Aduda Kate, she was a model and she's a supermodel and who is now dating a Nigerian guy. And so everybody's just going crazy and they're saying nasty things about her. What I would advise her is to just find within yourself the place where you find that confidence, you find that drive, your reason as to why, and just keep on with life. As long as you're being respectful to your family, no one has any say really who you should date. It's my opinion that in Africa, they might have drawn all these lines from the 1884 Scramble for Africa, but to me, Africans are Africans. I don't care who it is that somebody decides to get married to. So it is a very prevalent issue. I have encountered it myself. It's one of the most hurtful things that you encounter as a young person, as a female, and the fact that people don't know where their rights end and where yours begin is the more reason why we need our voices heard more. Women need to be more visible, so it becomes a norm that the women doing incredible things across the board in South Sudan, across Africa, across the world, and just letting people, such shallow people that take or bridge other people's rights, to let them know to stop the narcissistic behavior and know, learn boundaries. I know that it's one thing, especially where we come from, that the rumors, and this is everywhere too. But I feel it's much more where we come from. So I use these opportunities as a platform to basically educate. I know it's not my business to educate. Um, Sometimes we need to just be mindful of other people's emotions and just be more positive than we are sometimes. So I use it as a platform to educate and to correct. And I do it with love, and I do it with just being confident in myself that, for instance, a dude's case, or even my case, where because of sports and because of being in shorts sometimes and because of all these other things, that you might get, like, you know, bullies that think you're not woman enough, you might be a boy, you might be this and that, just based on that. But I always turn it around and educate them. And I let them know, because you know what? We have to continue to have that thick skin to let people know that, you know what? It's okay. I can agree to disagree with you. I can agree to just try this one time. And it's not going to be a consistent thing where you keep trying to address the same thing, different people talking about it. You just make it a holistic, hey, this is my response. End of the day, you go on with your life. That's the only way to silence bullies as such, and to just, let others, or if, let's say, people are not from the same place, or have a different mentality towards women, and necessarily don't understand that, what we're facing here is very prevalent in our society, that even they get to learn from one situation being handled in that kind of way, and hopefully it spreads around and makes people rethink how they approach some of these topics, and how they approach, especially young ladies. Because a dude, for instance, is about what, maybe 22, the oldest, if she could be. So yeah, she might be bound to make some mistakes, but those are her mistakes to make. And I think they should just respect her as a person, and they should respect the choices that she makes.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for making that statement. And I like the part where you talked about boundaries, because I think that is something that um, awareness and education is good, but I think also when it reaches extent, when it becomes a form of cyberbullying, it is necessary to actually put in laws that can actually criminalize and penalize these actions, because people are not the same, and it affects people differently, and it can actually destroy someone's life, someone's career, and many other things. So I think it is very important that we put those boundaries, but also penalize and actually have laws in place that penalize such actions. So thank you so much, Sarah, for bringing that up. I'll move on to Honorable Gemanunu. Um, there is, on the issue of social media also, there is um, a tendency among South Sudanese women that we are using our social media platforms to spread messages that do not promote peace, or hate messages, or messages that do not promote values that exist within our culture and our society. I mean, whether through WhatsApp or whether it's through Facebook or other platforms, we've seen a lot of videos going around where women are speaking very ill about specific communities or specific individuals, etc. What advice can you give in regards to this matter? Honorable Gemma, can you please unmute? We cannot hear you. Sorry, if you can unmute. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Media is a very important channel that we can, if used effectively, can change a lot of things, because media um, can shape societal view about things. It can produce, it can change societal norms and beliefs on many things. And then the social media is a very important platform that should give the opportunity to us and for women to actually advance their interests and advance their needs. Unfortunately, most of the time, we tend to use media to destroy ourselves, because talking about the kind of postings you see from women, young women, and or women of all ages. Some of them, not all. It's not productive at all. We tend to kind of counter the efforts, not only our local efforts, but the global effort of women empowerment and women emancipation. I would like to urge the users of media, especially the women, that media can be used to either destroy, it can be used to destroy us, or to promote us, or to enforce the existing stereotypes about women. Because now, I call it unfortunate, because women should have actually one voice in advancing their interest. But when we turn against ourselves, because I have seen postings whereby we, the women, turn against our own women leaders in different sectors, criticize them, talk negatively about them. And then men, our male counterparts, take that as an opportunity, to actually say, look, even women are not supporting themselves. Why do they expect us to support them if they themselves are not supporting themselves? So we should actually use the media on positive things that can develop, that can change the attitude, that can change the norms, that can change the beliefs, the stereotypes about women, and support the global efforts that are being exerted to promote the women. So when we talk in media, we have also seen how women themselves, portray themselves, to look like in an undignified manner. This is not acceptable, because it affects the dignity of women, and therefore nobody can respect us if we don't respect ourselves in the first place. Also, social media is used, for example, we should not contribute to the beliefs that we are victims, or we can be used, to advance the interests of other people. If you look at the advertisement industry, for example, advertisement of products, women are used to portray themselves in a fashion that does not give honor to the women. So it is us to assert ourselves and refuse to be used by others to make money, at our own expenses. So these are some of the things that we should be careful. We should monitor. We should actually be able to monitor how we are portrayed. Other people are portraying us on media. Not to talk about our own selves, how we portray ourselves, by the way we talk, about other women leaders. So my advice is that we should use media effectively, because media can promote, it can also destroy. So this is what I can advise my female colleagues who are using social media. We should not misuse that opportunity. That let us use that opportunity to get something positive for the development and emancipation of women, and support ourselves. I've heard this on several occasions that, oh, women, you're fighting among yourselves, you are talking about women empowerment.
Honorable Nunu, I think we cannot hear you. I think your internet might be having.
About women empowerment.
Unfortunately, I think Honorable Nunu, you have come back. I think something was wrong with the internet. You couldn't hear the last point that you just made. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I saw that. I was saying women should support themselves by actually talking positively about themselves, and not to look like we are fighting among ourselves, or we are not appreciating what our women leaders are doing. This will actually increase the stereotypes about women, and which will also make men not to really support our efforts, because we want for women empowerment to succeed, or women equality, or even for us to look to use the media better. We should actually be the one to champion a better use of the media, because we cannot expect the men to respect us if we ourselves do not respect us. Because I've seen some of their posting videos where women are talking, using the social media to talk very negatively about other women, how they portray themselves in an undignified manner. So we should not be the first people to make things, or to say things that actually contribute to the stereotypes that are there for women. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Honorable. It's a very important point that we have to be our sister's keeper, and be the one who pulls up or pushes up our sisters, and not bring them down. And I think that's a very, very important and critical message for the women of South Sudan. Honorable Rebecca Joshua, I want you to talk a little bit about the digital divide. The digital divide has been a conversation in multiple international platforms, where they talk about an uneven distribution when it comes to access to, use of, or the impact of information communication and technology (ICT) between distinct groups. And in this regard, I'm referring to both women and men. And I think what we've seen happening is, when we talk about the role ICT can have in promoting education, development, and all these things, we find that when it comes to access to that digital space, it is not the same for women and men. If there are online free courses online that can help you to promote your resume, for example, and women have less access to that than men, it becomes a challenge, and becomes something that hinders gender equality. I want you to speak a little bit on that, whether there are policies in place that specifically works on bridging this digital divide, since especially in your previous capacity as the Minister of Telecom.
Very much, Palek. This is very important, because we are now at the digital age, and we've been talking about the fact that nobody should be left behind. And again, if women were already left behind because of traditions and customs and attitudes, I think we should not allow women to be left behind. And therefore, the digital era has come. It has been coming, because sometimes we also think when we talk about technology, we may think it's only today or yesterday, but it has been technology throughout our lives. Even during the time of the radio, when it started some centuries ago, when the radio came, it was also technology. And then it continued to improve and continue to improve. And today we're going to mobiles, and the mobiles also, they keep on improving. And we also, when we talk about G2, G3, and people are now at G5 somewhere, when some of us are still behind. So it has been technology throughout, but of late, it has been very rapid. You know, the change is very, very rapid, because there are also countries that keep on day and night working into research. And when they go into research, they improve very quickly. New type of laptops, new type of a software, new type of mobiles. And today, we are at the era where we say there is a technology of things. You know, technology of things, the glasses you wear, you can fix on them some cameras, and as you move on the road, you are recording. The watch you have, it also has some devices, the health has come in, and the rest. So I just want to say that there is very rapid progress when it comes to technology now, and therefore we cannot afford to be left behind. And because of that, we talk about the digital divide. Today, this goes with how much, if we want to focus on our country as an example, you have a very big rural community. And some of us who are in the towns and are in the cities, you know, there are few of us compared to our countryside. And therefore, if we don't have the opportunity in our rural areas, then there is a big population of our people who are excluded, and they are not going to come in. It's very important that we try to bridge the gap. So you have a gap between the rural and the urban, and you also have the gap between the men and the women, and all this. So we have to tackle all of these things simultaneously. Why I did my master's in ICT is because I just realized that actually when I started my studies, I was doing something else. I was doing media, radio, and literacy. But then in the middle of the course, when I became the Minister of Telecommunication, I changed my topic in the middle of my work. Why? Because I've realized that the issue of ICTs and the digital world has crept very quickly into us. For us, South Sudan, we're still far behind, and therefore we need to do something about it. Then in my study, I focused on adoption of ICTs. And by that, I mean radio, I mean television, and all this online we are talking about. And then I was trying to find out, have we adopted technology? And if we have, then where are we? And if we have not, why? And I've realized there are a lot of challenges there. One of them is the issue of internet, the issue of fiber. Today we were trying to fix it, took us time to fix. I'm sure my daughter here, Sarah, didn't suffer a lot to, I can see her background looking so beautiful. Mine is dark. Why? Because I had to make some effort to be able to connect, to be connected digitally. And why? Because my network could not be strong. I have to go somewhere to be connected. So this is one area. The other area is the issue of power. These are now the deduction from my studies. One of them is the fiber and the network. The other one is the power. You may not have even power into your computer, and you have to go to somebody's house to either get power into your computer, into your mobile, and maybe you take it to the market and your equipment disappears and all this. So I don't want to dwell too much on the study, but I'm saying it has been very clear that the adoption of ICTs in our country is slow. Why? Because we don't have the things that will allow us to move very quickly. For example, I had a number of frequent activities in Rwanda when I was the Minister of Telecommunications, and we traveled to the countryside. We found the people in the countryside are connected because they have the fiber optic is connected in their country, and therefore they have a lot of opportunities to go digital. So we are talking about divide because of the reasons I have mentioned and because of more reasons around us. Also, the acquiring the equipment. You may have power and you may have fiber, but if you don't have a laptop or you don't have a mobile, which is modern, that's a small little what we call toy mobile. It will sometimes not connect you. It's also expensive. This is one area also I've seen. When you don't have a connection, then it's expensive and you have to pay for it. So the question will be, do I pay for my food or I go and look for a cyber shop where I'm going to be doing my work there? So these are some of the challenges that we've had, and we have some of them up to now, and we need to continue to improve. Now, we want to talk then about how do we bridge that divide? I think that could be the crux of what you want to talk about. One is to work very hard to be connected digitally as a country. And we need to do that so that we don't only connect Juba, but we connect Juba, Malakal, Wout, Orit, Yambio, and even your small village there that I have not mentioned. If we have the internet there, then we'll give an opportunity to our communities to be connected. And actually in our policy, we have in our policy 6.3.12 talks about engendering ICT. Engendering ICT, women, and also inclusion of women in policy formulation. Not only that, even women in leadership is also mentioned in our policy. And therefore, it's our right as women to be digitally connected, because ICT is it helps us to change. It enables us. It's an enabler for us to change, enabler for us to improve, enabler for us to progress economically and in all aspects. We also have to have that program, and we have it. But again, if you have the opportunity for getting the gadgets, opportunity for being connected is difficult, then it becomes difficult also to give that literacy program. I want to zero in also on the issue of literacy. I know today you look at these very young people, those little children we have, they grow in the era of digital, and therefore you find them, even they can operate them easier than I do. But it's still, the literacy is very important for men, for women. But again, when we talk about the men and women divide, women have to come in. And there are these two issues. One, the women take a scapegoat into, I've not gone to school, and therefore don't bother me, I don't know these things. We tried it. I tried it personally. I told women, look, you must be digitally educated. They tell you sometimes, I can't, I've not gone to school. But actually, what we know from experience is that there are a few things. If you have ABC and you have 1, 2, 3, and you can strike the key, there is something you can do. So literacy is very important, and we can even improve literacy through the digital world, isn't it? You have, you have digital literacy is one of those components which are very important in the policies of telecom, and therefore we need to encourage women to accept. Don't say, I've not gone to school. You come, you get an opportunity. When I was the minister, within the ministry, inside the ministry, we had some empty prefabs rooms. And I said, this one, we are going to improve on it and continue with what we call Samuel Yunis Computer Digital Institute. And I said, this one, I want to see it one day, even if I'm not here, it must become the University of Technology. That's very important. We also linked up with the University of Juba, and we've been doing a lot of good work together with Juba University for training. Also, young people, there was youth for ICT, and I want to take this opportunity wherever my son Thomas is. He used to come to me and say, "Mami, you are the minister. We as young people, we want to cling on you so that you help us." And you know what happened at the end of the day? They even opened a center at Nyakuren. And we went and opened it, and they got some support. That is digital literacy. Not only that, but they were training IT youth. And they were working on, the mobiles and all this kind of things. So we had that, and then at the end of the day, when it became so difficult for people to come in to the institute at the ministry, we also said, okay, just come and learn some computer typing and all this handling that. Adoption of ICT is very important. Therefore, people can learn it. It's not difficult at all. And there is that phobia, the phobia of the technology. I had an uncle who said one day, "Look, I came to your house and I found your little daughter using a computer. I felt ashamed. And therefore, he said, tomorrow I'm going to register at the institute in town because I want to learn it." That was my uncle, who was very old. But how many old people who will say, "I want to learn how to use a computer, I want to go digital"? Many of them will say, "I fear that thing. I don't want to sit even next to it." And you go to other institutions that I visited personally when I was doing my research, I'll find the computer, the desktop sitting at the table, and the owner of that table is looking the other direction, because it's just they don't want even to touch that thing because they don't know what is inside. Now, we have then in the programs, since when I was in the ministry, and I'm sure it continues, we have something we call rural access, which is very important. This rural access give an opportunity for our people in the rural areas to go digital. The other thing is the universal access. Universal access is one of the components and the Ministry of Telecommunications, where you also put money to help the rural and also help the disadvantaged. And that will include some of the women who have not reached that level or who fear and all this. So it is possible, it is easy. The government has policy and it has programs, but they need to be expedited. And we also want to do our work as women and tell our women, please come in. There is no fear about it. It is easy. You can learn it even from your grandchild, and then you move forward. We also give them chance outside the formal institutions so that they don't say, okay, when it's formal, I'm shy, I can't go, I'm old and all this. So I want to encourage all of us. It's our role to play so that we build and bridge that gap between the rural and the urban, and also between others and the women who are left behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Rebecca. And I think the points that you mentioned are very, very, very important. And on that, I would like to say that this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, has also allowed us to see not only allowed us to see, but increase the already existing inequalities that you have made reference to. When the world is talking about working from home, in some parts of South Sudan, people are unable to work from home because they cannot access internet. So I think some of these conversations are very important and they are very interesting, and it is necessary for us to continue these conversations in this platform. Maybe we make room for another day where we discuss in details some of these challenges that our country is experiencing. We're running out of time, or we have actually run out of time already. And I want to allow all our panelists to give some closing remarks or recommendations or way forward. We've had a very interesting discussion, and I think the different expertise and experiences in this panel really is a reflection of the capacity of the women of South Sudan to discuss very important issues, policy issues that can move our country forward. I want to start by maybe Ms. Sarah, and then moving to Ms. Lucy, then Honorable Gemma, then Honorable Rebecca. Just in 1 minute, some concluding remarks. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paleki. In my opinion, if we as women of South Sudan get more women to participate in policy making, we get more of the youth to show up. And as we climb, we also teach other women and, just basically pour back into our communities to pull each other up, that we will get to where this utopian idea of what we think South Sudan could be, possibly, technologically, politically, just even socially, that we'll get there someday. So it's an honor to be here, and thank you everybody for your amazing contribution. I've learned so much.
Thank you so much, Miss Sarah. Moving on to you, Lucy.
Thank you. I think I have a few things to say. One, we've seen the media laws and the code of ethics. We have beautiful institutions for the media, for regulating, ensuring that there's a good media environment and that journalists are acting professionally. But are we following this on both ends? I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, both on the government side and on the journalist side. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Secondly, I want to say something about the social media. I think, the traditional media, as it were, the newspapers, the print media, the broadcast, the radio, they had institutions and processes that ensured that, certain standards were upheld. But the social media has come in such a way that it is open to everybody. Anyone can contribute anything. There can be hatred. There could be cyberbullying all over. So it is very difficult to actually limit or to stop that on social media. And I would think like the best thing would be for us as for example, intellectuals or South Sudanese women, to really desist from that. We can only encourage or discourage people from doing it, but we cannot force them to stop. But also, I think liking and commenting and getting into those platforms and talking to those people really gives them legitimacy to continue doing such kind of videos that are not helpful to us. And then lastly, I'd like to highlight some of the challenges that faces journalists. And I think that journalists in South Sudan really operate in a very dangerous environment. And we've had journalists who've been killed in the line of duty. We've had journalists that are being intimidated. There's harassment, there's threatening. And all this is done when these journalists are actually, doing their duties. There's also an aspect of lack of training. Many of our journalists have not gotten proper training, and I think that is something that also needs to be worked on. But it's important to understand also where the journalists are coming from. And I think one thing I would like to say is that the conflict, like Mama Becky had said earlier, the conflict between the government and the media is a long conflict. It's been there forever. It's a conflict that is very difficult to really solve. But the moment the government understands that journalists are really not after your heads, or the journalists are really just trying to bring out what the government is doing, whatever is going wrong, they'd like to ask questions about it. When there is that mutual understanding of the role of the media, I think there'll be a better approach to how journalists report on South Sudan and how South Sudanese journalists really operate. And right now, if you look at the media in South Sudan, especially those ones in Juba or in South Sudan, they are self-censoring. There are issues that are big that needs to be talked about, but nobody will talk about them. Why? Because these are issues, if you touch, it's a red line. If you talk about this, it's against the government policy. If you do this against the government. So it's something that makes journalists censor themselves. And then we are not able to operate properly. So we end up doing stories, social stories, which are also important. But there are some bigger stories that can be done, but the environment is not conducive. Lastly, thank you very much for the opportunity. I am really glad that I have seen all, met all of you, and talked to all of you. And I think we should continue with this kind of conversations so that we can make our environments, more conducive for discussions, and we can be able to start changing the mentality of our people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And I think the point on dialogue is a very important one. And I'm sure that it is something that can be taken up by the various stakeholders to start this dialogue between media houses and the government. So thank you so much for your concluding remarks. It's appreciated. Honorable Gemma Nunu, I'll move to you now to give your concluding remarks. Honorable Nunu, can you please unmute? Sorry. And
yeah, thank you once again, Faleki. I really want to commend, before I conclude, I commend you, the moderator, and also the South Sudanese Intellectual Group, and for establishing this platform for the South Sudanese intellectual, where they can actually engage themselves and address societal issues or women issues and South Sudanese issues in general. As a way forward, I think as a recommendation, I would like to encourage the women, advise that we should remain vigilant and continue monitoring the way women are portrayed in media, and also encourage women, those who are in the media sector, to advance themselves in the sector and actually ascend to higher decision-making positions in the media sector. We also need really to use the media and promote women as equal partners in the development of our nation. And I also want to encourage the women to effectively participate in media, to promote the gender issues and promote themselves in the media, and avoid using media for negative issues. Just as I said before, actually affect our efforts and pull us down. So we should use the media to uplift ourselves. And we need to continue raising our voices in media and actually challenge the status quo, and ensure that media is used effectively to promote both men and women. And finally, we need to promote ourselves as women. And also those who are running newspapers, we need to encourage women to come forward, tell their stories, their positive stories. We should not only look at the negative things, but women are doing a lot. There are many things women are doing positively. Those who are women leaders in politics, those who are in businesses. We have a lot of women who are successful in businesses. We need to tell this story in media. We have a number of magazines which are being run by women. We need women to be interviewed, to be appearing on those monthly editions, to tell the story of women and actually influence the attitude and the beliefs and the attitude of our people. By doing so, slowly we will be able to change the mindset of our people, and then in a way we can be able to overcome the stereotypes. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Honorable Nunu. And I like the summary that you gave about the importance of also highlighting success stories and of women, because I'm sure women are doing a lot of work in South Sudan, but we don't document, and those stories don't reach the media sometimes. So it's very important that we highlight these stories. I'll move over to you, Honorable Rebecca. I'll give you 1 minute, strictly 1 minute. To give remarks, because we're really
the last person eats the bones. Okay. Yeah, I'm eating bones, but it's okay. I just want to say this is a good opportunity and say, one, we need to share as women together for our empowerment. We also need to encourage our young women to join the media. There's nothing to fear about. In media, you can play even better than any other places. So I want the journalists, women to be journalists and to come to the front line so that they can also empower their sisters and brothers. I also want to say in the social media, a lot needs to be done and we need to talk to one another so that we come up with the positive stories, as said, and not the negative ones, but also want to bridge the digital divide. And I will try our very best in our positions of leadership and decision making to ensure that the digital divide is bridged, and that the female journalists are trained, and that we work together to be to protect one another. And the sky is the limit, as I always said. We can do it. We can do it if we do it in solidarity together. Thank you. I thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really want to give my honest appreciation to all panelist members for your time. We've spent 2 hours discussing. I know you're very busy people, and I appreciate also sharing your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom. It has been very useful and it has been very informative. And I just want to say that this is the beginning of discussions about some of these very important things that affect our lives as women. And creating this platform provides us with an opportunity to discuss our issues. And I want to also say that we will continue having these discussions on these very important issues, and appreciate every single one of you again. And the struggle for women will continue, and the struggle for gender equality is continuing. So thank you so much, and have a good day, and enjoy your evening or morning, wherever part of the world you're in. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Calm down.